Welcome this evening to our webinar. We're so glad to have you guys. My name is Amy Gardner, and I'm one of the co-founders of Givefinity, which is a mobile app for high school students to be able to track their volunteer hours. Actually, anybody can use it, but for the purposes of our conversation tonight and talking about teens and their digital footprint, we're focusing in on them. And I'm so excited to introduce Julie Fisher to you. She is a wealth of resource for our kids and navigating social media, and her company is Your Digital Guardian, and I'm going to turn it over to her now so she can help us learn how our teens can be good stewards on the internet.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kenton, for having me. I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you, so just give me 1 second, and I will pull up some slides. All right. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my slides here. So we're going to talk tonight about being a digitally smart teen. So what a lot of kids don't realize is that what they do today, what they did when they were 11, 12, 13, can actually impact their opportunities later in life. And what you're looking at on this page is a tweet from Brandon Chambers, who at the time was a coach at Marymount University, and he dropped a recruit over a single tweet. So this kid unfortunately lost out on a $140,000 scholarship because of something he tweeted. So if you think that adult decision makers aren't checking out what kids are doing online, you're sorely mistaken. So let me just give you a little bit of background about who I am and why I know what I know. So for many, many years, I taught high school. I was a high school social studies teacher. There is not a social studies class, AP, IB, or otherwise, that I have not taught. After I retired from teaching, I became the director of a nonprofit that focused on preventing risky behaviors in kids and teens. And when I started doing that, all of our requests were about drugs and alcohol. Around 08, 09, those requests really changed, and people wanted to know about technology, specifically social media. So we're talking about when smartphones were coming out and when Facebook first started. And what I realized was that there weren't a lot of people talking about anything besides stranger danger. And what so many parents, myself included, were looking for was, how do I keep my kids safe online? What are the rules? What should the rules be? What's the right age for social media, to get your own device, that kind of thing? And because my background is in education and specifically writing curriculum, I started writing curriculum and programs on the topic. From there, I was lucky enough to find a venture capital company that wanted to back an idea I had, which was to create social media report cards. Again, this kind of coincided with my own children, who at the time were in high school, and we were thinking about college. And I started thinking, well, gee, how is what they shared online going to affect them when it comes time to apply to college? So what we did was we created technology that delivered social media report cards to kids, and identified every post in somebody's history that could potentially cause them trouble. After a period of time, we realized we either had to sell our data, which were mostly minors, underage kids, or we had to shut down shop. So we worked for a number of years, and then we decided to put the technology away because all of us on our board were parents, and none of us could kind of wrap our minds around selling kids' data. So I kind of went into business on my own, and I started doing consulting and coaching, and that's where we are today. But I've worked with admissions directors from almost every selective and highly selective school. I've spoken at college admissions officers conferences. I've worked with HR professionals. So I know what they want to see and what they don't want to see. That said, let's get into it. So when it comes to teenagers, Number one, as adults, we need to recognize that our kids are going to make mistakes online. Anytime we learn something new, we make mistakes, and our kids are no different. So when I explain digital footprints to kids, I try and use the analogy of a tattoo because they understand the permanence of a tattoo, and your digital footprint is permanent. It is going to follow you the rest of your life. And yes, when I speak to a large group of students, there's always somebody in the audience who like to say, well, you can remove a tattoo. And I love it when they do that, because the answer is sure, you can remove a tattoo, but it usually leaves a little scar behind. The same is true when it comes to technology and your digital footprint. So if you make a mistake online, delete it from the server where you posted it if you can, but recognize that the time between when you pushed the post, share, send button and the time and the next time where you realize, gee, maybe I shouldn't have posted that, you have no idea who's seen it and who saved it to their own device, and you can't control what somebody's going to do with it after that happens. So the moment you press that enter, send, or post button, what you're really doing is you're giving up control of your content. And as parents, we need to remember to remind our kids over and over and over about that fact. So our kids are careless. They make mistakes. As I said, they all make mistakes. But why do they make mistakes? The first one is because they have that device in their hand. It's in their hand all the time. And because that device is in their hand and these smartphones give our kids access to the world in a way that we, their parents, never had access before, it's really easy to make mistakes, because in the moment, it could seem like a really good idea to tweet out this thought, share this idea, share this picture or video, but kids are thinking, they're not thinking a step ahead. They're not thinking about the consequences. They're not thinking about how what they're sharing could be misinterpreted. The second reason our kids are careless is because of something I like to call the superiority bias. And what I mean by that is we all think we're smarter than that other guy. So everybody's heard a story about somebody who's made a mistake online, and we read it in the news or we hear about it on TV or online, and we say to ourselves, oh, God, that person was such an idiot. I would never do that. But you can be sure that the person you're reading about today who made a mistake said the same thing about the person before them. We all, adults included, think we're smarter than the other guy. The third reason I believe kids are careless is something I call the ambiguity effect. And what I mean by this is it is so hard to wrap your head around the idea that what you share, your little tweet, your text, your post could go viral, could be seen by thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people, that we don't let our mind go there. And instead we do a little bit of rationalization and we say to ourselves, my friends know me, they're the only ones that are going to see this, so it's okay to post. So what I like to tell kids, before you share anything digitally, you need to be asking yourself the following questions. Would I be okay if my parents saw this? Would I be okay if my grandparents saw this? Would I be okay if my teachers or principals saw this? Would I be okay if a police officer or a judge saw this? Would I be okay if my coach saw this? Would I be okay if my clergy saw this? Would I be okay if all of my classmates saw this? Would I be okay if the admissions officer at the college I really want to go to saw this? And would I be okay if my future employer saw this? If you can't say yes, you'd be fine with all those people seeing whatever it is you want to share digitally, you should be sharing it digitally. Again, the reality is once you make something digital, you can't really control what happens to that content. A few things that you need to remind your kids to never share: where they live, your address, their phone number, mom's maiden name. And moms, I want you to hear this loud and clear. On Facebook, for instance, a lot of us will put our maiden names in our name on Facebook because we want old friends to be able to find us, and maybe they wouldn't know us by our married name if you've changed your name. The thing is, The two most popular password retrieval questions are, what is your mother's maiden name? And you can see the next one on the list, what's your pet's name? Because those are the easiest to remember. So if somebody can find out what mom's maiden name is and what your pet's name is, if you are using those as your password retrieval questions in case you get locked out of your account, somebody else can very easily hijack your accounts. You also should never share where you are at any given time. And just an aside to that, I just shared a post on Instagram this week about this. Within your phone, within your device, in your camera app settings, you should toggle off the location for photos and videos. Whenever you take a picture on your device, it stores the location in the metadata of that image. And there is a real simple way to turn it off. If you go to @yourdigitalguardian.com on Instagram, there is a post that walks you through how to do it for an iPhone, a Samsung phone, and any other kind of Android phone. So I highly suggest you do that. And then finally, parents, guess what? You've got to actually tell your kids not to share that kind of personal dirty laundry that we often talk about around the dinner table. So maybe you're complaining about your neighbor. Maybe you're complaining about a crazy aunt. Kids have to be told that that information is not for sharing because they're following all of these influencers, all of these celebrities whose job it is to share all kinds of personal information about themselves. So our kids often think, well, if they're doing it, then it's okay for me to do it too. And so you got to tell them no. Another thing I like to tell parents to do is to remind their kids, even do it with your kids, before you agree to the terms and conditions, actually read them to know what you're agreeing to. For instance, Snapchat. Snapchat says, number one, they can change their terms at any time and they don't have to tell you. And number two, they can use your content any way they want, which means that silly snap that you send your friend could be up on a billboard. I've listed TikToks here and YouTubes here. One thing that you'll notice is that 13 is the minimum age for all social media apps in the United States. The reason for that is something called COPPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And what COPPA states is that nobody, no site, no app can collect personally identifiable information about anybody under the age of 13. And every social media app, they get their value by collecting data and using that data and selling that data. So that's why 13 is the minimum age. And parents, hey, use it to your benefit if you can. Well, gee, I would love to let you use TikTok, but you're not 13. So just a little food for thought out there. So I want to show you some actual examples of posts that were put out there by teens and tweens. So on the left, we see two young girls, and look at that. One of them is holding that ubiquitous red Solo cup. Now the cup could be blue, it could be yellow, it could be green. It does not matter what color the cup is. What matters here is the lens through which others are going to view what you put out there. And as an adult, when I see underage kids holding that cup, I just assume there's probably something alcoholic in that cup. How many times have you actually called somebody to ask them to clarify something in a photo that you saw online? Probably almost never. We all form opinions about other people based on the lenses through which we're looking at something in the moment. And just because somebody intended for you to see something one way doesn't mean that's how you're going to see it. And we've got to be talking to our kids about this. In the middle, what you can see here, these were two girls who, they're from the South, posted pictures of themselves holding up the Confederate flag. They'd both been admitted to college already. They were seniors. One of them had her admissions rescinded because the school ended up seeing it. This post went viral. Again, we never know which posts are going to go viral. And they probably, when they shared this, were not thinking that the world was going to see this. This photo made the news, the national news. And this girl had her admissions rescinded because the school said it showed poor quality of character. Because maybe in her family, they thought of the Confederate flag as part of their Southern heritage. but a lot of people think of the Confederate flag very differently. Beneath them, we see three young boys holding up cans of something, and conveniently, they are covering up the labels of the cans. Again, am I going to assume that there's sparkling water in those cans? Probably not. I'm probably going to assume they're drinking something they shouldn't be drinking. Now, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, we see a picture of a girl on Instagram, and she looks very pretty. And usually, before we post, we look to see how we look in a picture, but oftentimes we don't look to see what else is in the picture. She's standing in front of her parents' liquor cabinet. Probably not a good idea to post a picture of yourself as an underage teenager standing in front of a whole bunch of liquor. And this is one of my favorites on the far right. So this is a student in Canada. There is a very well-known business school in Canada called the Ivy. And the student in the moment was filling out the application. And because the student had his phone in his hand and wasn't thinking about anything past the moment, tweeted that this IV application makes me want to projectile vomit into the head of admission's mouth. And to this person's surprise, the school tweeted back, duly noted. And then this applicant at the bottom is saying, I take it back, please accept me. Oh my God. The thing that you need to know and that your kids need to know is that every school has people whose job it is to engage and interact with people online when the school's mentioned. So we need to be thoughtful about sharing that kind of information. Now, it's not only teenagers, it's young adults as well. Young adults a lot of people have gotten fired for what they've shared online. Upper left-hand corner, a young woman got a job at Cisco, and she went online and she says, I'm excited I got this job, but now I have to weigh the utility of a fatty paycheck against the daily commute to San Jose and hating the work. Right after she posted that, Cisco got in touch with her and rescinded the offer. To her right, we see a woman who, by the way, was a teacher and posted a picture of herself smoking marijuana with the caption, naked, wet, and stoned. She immediately lost her job because some of the parents ended up seeing that. We have another tweet to the right of that, and I apologize. I did not block out the nasty words, but a very racist tweet. And you'll see again beneath that, somebody was working at a sandwich shop and is showing how they are sticking their fingers into the sandwiches, which obviously not hygienic, shouldn't be doing, and we're going to serve them. And I also would like you to take a look at this person's username because usernames matter. This person's username was Weed Priest. To the left, there's an exchange between Celia and Celia's boss. And Celia got a job and then went on Twitter to complain about the job, and her boss fired her on Twitter after she posted that. So kids are making mistakes. Kids and young adults are making mistakes left, right, and center. So let me go back for a second to checking out the entire picture. So here we have the same picture. I blurred the faces. These were actually my kids. So I will say that. That's why I blurred their faces. But they were at a tailgate and they looked very cute at this tailgate. However, same picture on the left and the right. The one on the left shows somebody carrying what kids call a handle of vodka, one of those big jugs. On the right, we've just cropped it. And so now you see the girls, but you don't see the alcohol. And you also don't see all of the empties that are on the ground behind the girls. So you can share your pictures. You just have to look at the entire picture and think about, cropping can be your best friend. When I talk to teenagers, I like to talk to them about their personal brand. Your personal brand is really, you start creating it when you're young, because what you post online becomes part of your personal brand. And so when you think about a school like NYU, for instance, or you think about a company like Amazon, it's very important to universities, to companies, that you think about certain character or brand attributes when somebody says NYU or somebody says Amazon. When somebody says your name, what are they going to think? If you're posting pictures of yourself drinking a beer while you're driving or falling asleep in a pizza box, they're probably not going to think very highly of you, and you're going to need to do a little work on that personal brand. Perception is reality on social media. It shouldn't be, but it is. And I think the sooner that kids understand that, the better. Now, when it comes to college, character counts. In last year, Kaplan, the test prep company, every year they do a survey of admissions professionals. And for the last, I don't know, since 2015 or so, I think they've been asking the question about applicant social media. Last year, 66% of colleges said that they consider looking at an applicant's social media fair game during the admissions process. In 2019, just 2 years before, that number was 59%. So the number is going up. And I have for you just on this slide what the former head of undergraduate admissions, at the University of Michigan said, at Princeton University said, at UVA said. Social media now is fair game, and it is in all of our kids' best interest to recognize that and make sure they're doing what they need to do. In other words, auditing, cleaning up, and I'll explain that in a moment, before they apply. Coaches. So at the beginning, you saw Brandon Chambers tweet. It's not just him. Coaches are tweeting left, right, and center about dropping recruits because of single tweets, because of their usernames or their nicknames. Kids are losing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scholarships. And even though the NCAA has rules about when coaches can start recruiting, if you have a public profile, which so many people do, and your tweets, your posts are available to the public, there is nothing to prevent anybody from just kind of glancing at what you're doing, as long as they're not actively recruiting you. So what are the red flags when it comes to college admissions and frankly jobs, but I'm going to speak specifically about college admissions. Showing anything or talking about anything that has to do with illegal activity. And if you are under the age of 21, that includes any references or images related to alcohol and certainly any kind of drug use. Anything related to violence, discrimination, or prejudice. Anything that is very overtly sexualized, or nudity, partial nudity, can be a red flag, and then profanity. Now, adults know you're going to swear online. Teenagers swear. It's not that big a deal. But if I'm looking at your profile and I'm looking at your Twitter page, and on one page I can't find a tweet without you dropping the F-bomb or something profane, that's when it's a problem. So we want kids to clean up the language. What's the answer? So I think one of the first things kids need to think about is a social media audit. So an audit is where we go through all of your past posts and identify the posts that have the potential to cause you trouble. And I just have an example here on the right. This is when I work with individuals professionally and I conduct audits for them. So I look at their username and then I look at all of their posts, identify all the posts, tell them why they're of concern, and then I score them. So kids know this one really needs to be edited or deleted, or this one isn't so bad, but it could be problematic. And There are ways for kids to do audits themselves, and kids really should do regular audits about every 3 or 4 months. But to get started, it's always a good idea to have a third party look at it, because your children think that something was okay to post in the first place. That's why they posted it. So they're not necessarily going to recognize how an adult decision maker might view what they've put out there. Employers, when it comes to social media, social sleuthing is standard. Number one, you need to have a an online presence. There are a lot of people who think, oh, I'm going to apply to college, or I'm going to apply to a job, I'm just going to delete all my social media. Guess what? If somebody's looking for you and they can't find you, that presents a whole other set of problems. It gets people wondering, hey, what are you hiding? Why aren't you online? Why aren't you interacting with other people and your peers? What's going on? And just as an example, think about it this way. Let's say you're trying to figure out where to go for dinner. Most of us, the first thing we do is we, Google restaurants. And if we can't find a restaurant online, to see the menu, we just move on to the next one. And the same is going to happen with you if you're looking for a job or you're looking to get into school. But employers, over 70% of them are checking applicants out online. Why? Character counts, and whether it's a university or college or an employer, you as either a member of the university community or as an employee represent that brand. If you do not represent yourself well online, the college, the employer is going to infer you're probably not going to represent their brand well either. So if they're looking for quality of character. That is at the top of the list. When I interviewed hundreds of admissions officers, 80% of them said that was the number one reason. Another reason is they're interested in your kids' talents, things that wouldn't necessarily come out on an application. Some are looking to verify awards. If your child is looking to get into a selective program, wants scholarships, or absolutely, if they're an athlete, just expect that they're going to be looked at online. If your child has a disciplinary or even a criminal record, chances are they're going to be looked at much more carefully as well. And then the last reason that they look is, it's super unfortunate, but it's happening more and more. It's called admission sabotage. Unfortunately, getting into college has become a sort of competitive sport. And as such, there are other people who are reporting on other candidates who they think might have an edge over them. And what I have found from lots of admissions officers, when they get those emails, when they get that information, they often will look. And, I wish we didn't have to talk about it, but that's the world that we live in. So when I talk to kids, these are my rules when it comes to social media. Social media is a place to be your authentic self. So be you, but remember that other people are going to be forming opinions about you through lenses other than your own. So you want to consider those other lenses and how what you put out there might be misinterpreted by others. Take out the trash, so stop swearing. Opt out of tags. When you allow somebody to tag you in a post, what you're essentially letting them do is you're letting them almost take control of your online reputation. When somebody tags you in something, you can't remove the tag. You can ask somebody to untag you, but you can't do it yourself. So for those sites that allow you to turn off tagging for kids, I highly suggest you turn off the tag. That does not mean that the picture that this person posted where it says, here I am with insert name, Julie Fisher at the fair. My name, Julie Fisher, would still be there, but there wouldn't be that hyperlink back to me. So it would just be my name. I also like to remind kids, as I mentioned before, to practice the 2-second rule. That's asking all of those questions. My parents, my grandparents, my principal, my teacher, the admissions officer at the school I want to go to. So take 2 seconds, run through that list in your head before you post. What's in that red Solo cup? Remember, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. Live by the golden rule online, just like you've been taught to do offline. So it's very easy to be nasty behind the screen. Be kind online. I like to tell kids that what goes on Instagram stays on Instagram, kind of like that what happens in Vegas thing. Yes, you can absolutely, and you should absolutely delete something off of a social media app server if you make a mistake. But remember, even if it's only been out there for 20 seconds before you realized you shouldn't have posted it, you don't know who's seen it and who saved it. And then finally, remember that adult decision makers are watching. They are looking to see what you're doing. They're looking to find out more about you and whether you think it's fair or not, whether you like it or not. That's what's happening. I highly suggest before your child applies to college or certainly for a job that you think about having them create a LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn has been optimized for high school students. It can do a number of things for your kids. It can set them apart from other college and job applicants. It allows you to present yourself in a much more professional manner without all of that noise from traditional social media. It allows you to connect and network with schools or employers of your choice, and you can include the URL in the additional information section on your application or your resume. It'll give you a public profile. Your photo will be much more professional looking. It allows you to create a strong summary, list all of your work history, list your skills, get endorsements from former teachers or people you worked for, did community service for. They can endorse you for skills. They can give you recommendations, and those will stay there on that LinkedIn profile as you advance through college and afterwards when you're looking for jobs. You can put examples of work or projects you did. You can list all of your honors and awards, coursework, interests. You can list all of that there and then start to network. And then the big thing that we're going to talk about is it's a great place to list all of your community service or community involvement. So this is something that Givefinity does so well, and it allows you, their app allows you to keep track of your experiences and your hours. And then you can transfer those experiences into the volunteer section on LinkedIn. They've got a special section there just for volunteer work that will again follow you throughout your entire career. Your kids can ask their supervisors to write recommendations for them on LinkedIn, as I said before, and endorse them for skills. It's a place to share images or video of your volunteer experiences. You can do it on LinkedIn. You can also put it, though, like on Instagram. It provides great social proof that the volunteer experience that you said you had, you actually had. And then within the Givefinity app, they have infographics that you can share on social media that will actually help you showcase that volunteer involvement. So why is this important? As I said before, character counts, and certainly volunteer experience and your showing your interest in causes and organizations you believe in just adds to your character. It's a great way to connect with other people in a meaningful way. So if you are, if you love animals, putting that information out there will attract other people who have similar interests, and it's a great way to network. And guess what? Colleges, employers, they care about community service and involvement. There's a wonderful site called collegedata.com that I'm going to show you. They have all kinds of information on there about every school in the world. So here are just a couple. And what I've highlighted here is both volunteer work and character or personality qualities. And for every school, they let you know whether each thing is very important, considered, or not considered. So if we take a look at the University of Michigan, they consider your volunteer work. They think that your character is very important. If you look at Pepperdine University, they say volunteer work is important and your character is very important. If you go right to UCLA, volunteer work is very important there, and your character is important. And then up to the right to Emory University, volunteer work is important and character is very important. So these universities, they are self-reporting how important all this stuff is. All this information is available at the College Data website. I highly encourage you to check it out. They also have great information about scholarships, about all kinds of things there. So volunteering does matter. 264 admissions officers from U.S. universities were recently interviewed, and they found out from this study that 58% of them said that a student's community service experience had a positive impact on their acceptance to school. 53% said that community service can be a deciding factor when they are looking at two students who are equally qualified in all other ways. 61% of respondents at private schools said community service can actually be the deciding factor. And 2/3 of respondents cited that the 3 reasons for valuing records of community service are that the student is likely to be active in student social life outside the classroom. They're going to be more willing to contribute to the school's mission, and the student shares the school's values. So these are all reasons why character counts, community service is important, and Givefinity is a great way to help you record all of that information and keep track of it. At this point, I'm kind of done. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I do have a handful of freebies if you're interested in. If you follow your digital guardian on Instagram, you can type well-being, you can type college, or you can type the word hygiene, and you will get some freebies from me if you do that. Also, if you mention that you listened to the recording, if you are looking for any services, I will give you 20% off on services. That said, I'm going to turn off my screen and turn it back to Amy. So let me stop my share.
Julie, thank you so much. I was taking notes and it was so informative. I want to sit down with all the teens I know and say, do you understand what you're doing? So thank you for just stressing the importance of it. And I appreciate it. Having not grown up with social media and being on the parenting side of it, I feel like there's so much to the parenting thing. And then to add on the managing of the social media, I'm grateful for you and all the work that you do to help us as parents guide our teens in this whole new space. So yeah, anybody have... It is a whole new frontier for us, right?
Right. So if anybody's on and wants to type something in the chat, I'm happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, you can always message me on Instagram. Questions? Amy, you're going to put this up on social media, and you'll send me a copy as well, and I will also post it. So anybody who missed it live will be able to see it, and you can direct questions to Amy, you can direct questions to me, and we'll make sure you get your answers.
Absolutely. And we'll post it on our website as well. So we appreciate you guys tuning in this evening. Thank you for sharing your Wednesday evening with us. And like Julie said, we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.